Prologue, Supervillain. Overall, Lord Static thought that inflicting superhumanity on himself was the 5th worst mistake he'd ever made. The 4th was going to be passing it on to whichever random sucker came across his soon-to-be mutilated corpse. That was assuming someone managed to find him fast enough. If nobody did, at least the son of a rusty screwdriver who'd sicked the overgrown wolf-rat thing on him wouldn't get anything from him posthumously. His partner would disappear if he died alone, and become a stranger's problem if he didn't. His pupil was a bull-headed young man and would be fine. Better than giving the ones who'd sent this monster what they'd demanded. He dodged the whipping tail headed for his eye by the skin of his teeth, and formed another nanobot construct to slash at the wolf rat's back. It bit through the fur and caught flesh, but instead of shedding blood, light spilled from the wound. A dozen similar injuries littered the monster's limbs and sides. Lord Static may as well have been tickling the thing for all the effect he was having on it. His own state was far worse than the wolf rat's. He was exhausted and sluggish from 5 minutes of hard fighting. The wolf had gotten in a claw attack before he'd gotten behind it that had severed an artery in his shoulder. That wound was dripping blood even with the construct bandage he'd thrown on. Worse, the arm was steadily going numb. The thing's tail had caught him a couple of times as well, leaving whip marks on his stomach and one of his outer thighs. His heart was beating far too hard to be healthy. Weapon side effects, and he could feel his legs starting to give out. He hit the alley wall with a groan and dropped to one knee to dodge a lash at the tail. The monster had gotten the drop on him as he was passing through the narrow, dirty alley and heading for the fire escape, despite how his guard was up. A trap. His partner had failed to alert him. If he'd been flight-capable, such a scheme wouldn't have worked, but a recent fight with one of the usual giant lizards had taken too much effort. If he flew now, his heart wouldn't be able to take the strain. The wolf had boxed him between itself and a dead end, and proceeded to prove itself both invulnerable and furious. A normal person would have been ripped apart in seconds. Lord Static was faring better, but not much. He'd managed to get under and behind the monster as it lunged, only to be confronted with its tail. Another whip crack, this one caught by a shield. He had to get away. The ambush had put him on the back foot, and he wasn't getting the advantage back in his current state. He dove for the mouth of the alley, knocking over a trash can by accident. He hadn't expected the monster to be able to turn around quickly in the confined space. It was a fatal miscalculation. Blinding pain shot up his leg as giant teeth tore into it, and his hip dislocated with a sickening pop. He was certain he screamed, but the world was all blurs and pain. The wolf shook his body as though he weighed nothing. His back and neck were wrenched by the force. He couldn't breathe. It threw him towards the alley's entrance after a few of the most agonizing seconds of his life. He hit the ground, and the pain coming from every inch of his upper body kept him from realizing he couldn't feel anything below his hips until he tried and failed to crawl away. His back was broken. He was as good as dead. In his last moments, he mentally apologized to his partner and his pupil. A soft, metallic sound touched his ears, and the beast lifted its head to look down the alley. With the last of his focus, Lord Static created a spike that rose from the ground and impaled the monster in its heart. The wolf rat shrieked, and a massive paw crashed into his side and swatted him like a fly. He hit the alley wall and let out a silent scream as every nerve in his back lit up with lightning. His ribs creaked like old wood. High odds they were cracked. Once his lungs restarted, he forced himself to sit up despite his body's protests. He needed to see who or what had distracted the wolf rat. When he saw it, his heart dropped. The situation was worse than he could have imagined. What was a kid doing here?